Hello there and welcome to PM Express. Disallowance and surcharge. It's arguably the missing piece of the puzzle in the fight against leakages and financial malfeasance in the public sector. Already, Ghana's status has worsened as the Auditor General is reporting that the taxpayer is reeling under the cost of some 17.4 billion cedis in financial irregularities. Well, but in this edition of PM Express, a proposition is being made that the state's coffers could be better resuscitated if only one man puts his constitutional power of disallowance and surcharge to good use. Under the coalition of the Democratic Accountability and Inclusive Governance Coalition, some 15 civil society groups are actually calling on the Auditor General himself, Johnson Siedu, to act fast. In fact, they have finally gotten that opportunity to engage the Auditor General on Friday, but that was not without incident. We do know that it started off with an RTI request to his office, and the latest resulting in some street protests, which has brought us to where we are today. I'll be telling you about my guests who are joining me in that fight for the exercise of the power to disallow and surcharge. But even before we get to that, there's a need for us to share the trajectory with you and give you a sense of why we're here assessing the issue of disallowance and interrogating civil society's fight against the Auditor General. So this is where it all started from. In terms of the concerns raised by the Occupy Ghana, we know that Occupy Ghana is definitely a civil society group here in Ghana. They're part of that coalition of 15 CSOs making that case. And so the grounds on which all of the pressure is coming through is that, first of all, there's a shocking revelation in terms of the response that this coalition is getting from the Auditor General. The Auditor General is disclosing that since it took over from Daniel Yao Domelevo, it's instructive to note that only one disallowance and surcharge has been triggered. And that's actually coming as a surprise, knowing that the predecessor of this very gentleman we're talking about has saved the state well in excess of some 60 million. We'll be getting to the details of that, but there's a need for us to also paint that picture to you in terms of telling you about some other attempts that were made to get clarity on the issue of not just disallowance and surcharge, but also to find out what other agencies such as the Office of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice have been doing about this push to try and recoup all of the funds that we're losing through to financial malfeasance in the public sector. So between 2017 and 2018, for instance, we do know that based on this RTI request that is unfolding from Occupy Ghana's demands, we're getting a sense that no enforcement occurred, for instance, because the Auditor General failed to provide a required follow-up information on what should be done about persons who are engaged in this issue of financial malfeasance, which we'll be pointing out to you shortly and telling you about some attempts that were made by both the previous and the current, of course, Auditor Generals in terms of what their approach has been in trying to retrieve some of the funds. We'll get to that. But also in 2019 and 2020, the Attorney General's offices or department is also indicating that they have no record, absolutely no record of enforcement. And in 2021, where we have the latest report being released by the Auditor General, we're also getting indication that all that has been exercised in terms of surcharge and disallowance has got to do with only one case, which is not ideal for this coalition that we're talking about and their push for some state funds to be retrieved. Now, Occupy Ghana is also making a sense of the response they're getting from both the Office of the Auditor General and from the Attorney General. And part of the reasons for which they believe we're where we are today has got to do with the fact that in their view, and this is their expression of opinion, they believe that there's some inordinate delay and significant tardiness on the part of the man we're talking about, the Auditor General, just to go ahead and exercise that power, because we've seen that in the past, and there's the expectation that he will do more. Beyond that as well, Occupy Ghana is pointing out that if you look at the orders that were given by the Supreme Court, when of course they pursued that matter on the Article 1877 in court, if you look at what the requirements were and what the subsequent directives were coming through in terms of the Supreme Court ruling, there was definitely no need for us to be arguing about this, because obviously both the Attorney General and the Auditor General are appearing to be breaching the 2017 orders of that court, when of course the clear express permission constitutional powers were reinforced for these two critical agencies to go ahead and exercise that power and retrieve for us some funds. That's not happening because obviously if you look at so many infractions that we started pointing out to you since last week about some issues of financial malfeasance, by now at least the process is that the power of disallowance and surcharge would have been triggered by this Auditor General, who's the same person superintending over the document we're receiving, pointing to the 17.4 billion that we're losing in financial malfeasance in the public sector. So we'll get to all of that shortly. But here's also what you need to know about, just giving you that sense of the key ruling that, of course, gave the reinforcement of the powers of disallowance and surcharge. And we do know that if you take a look at that ruling, the Auditor General, of course, according to the Constitution, has that power to disallow and surcharge whenever the circumstances listed in Article 187 of the Constitution are triggered. And the Attorney General must also enforce that disallowance and surcharge, including initiating criminal prosecution. Because you do know that some of the events that, of course, we're picking up, not just from the 2021 report, but the previous ones as well, there's a clear indication that some persons are engaged in criminality, and the need for the Attorney General to go ahead as that constitutionally recognized person and institution to go after the so-called criminals, as the Auditor General is pointing out in all of the previous report. Nothing has been done, as we've pointed out to you earlier, and we do know that there's one man who could be praised very much for using that power in terms of disallowance and surcharge. And that man is Daniel Yao Domelevo, the immediate past Auditor General. We do know that, as a matter of fact, he has actually done some work in terms of exercising the disallowance and surcharge. That amounted to some 67 million in all when it comes to surcharges, which he has exercised in trying to retrieve some funds for the state. And he's been so much applauded by civil society. He was one time awarded as the Man of Integrity for the year. And the belief was that once Kyoma was taking over, a lot more will be done in terms of trying to up the game and at least go beyond the 67 million mark. That has not happened, and that's why you have the likes of Occupy Ghana saying that they've noticed some inexplicable reluctance on the part of this Auditor General to disallow and surcharge. Then they go ahead to say that even when his annual reports point to constitutional disallowance and surcharge triggers, the Auditor General is refusing to issue that. And that's why we're here today, looking at that whole proposition from the coalition of civil society groups. Why is this the missing piece of the puzzle? And will that solve all of our problems in terms of financial malfeasance in the public sector? Be my guest on PM Express. I'll tell you about my guest shortly. And welcome back to PM Express with me, Blessed Sogah. Of course, let me tell you about my guest. I have Kofi Bento, his Vice President, Imani Africa, joining us on this very discussion. Martin Pebu is a legal practitioner and understands, of course, what's happening and why perhaps we're here today. And Dr. Eric Odrosa is Director General of the Internal Audit Agency. In studio with me, I have Dr. Emmanuel Kojo Asante, Director of Advocacy and Engagement at CDD Ghana. Dr. Asante, it's good to be talking to you.
Good.
You are in red,
yes.
which
tells us from my morning attire.
How was it for you today?
I think we showed our determination. It was raining on and off, but citizens still came out. That I want to thank all of them who came out to join the protest and basically register a strong statement that we are not happy with the current state of the way in which we are dealing with accountability in the public service. And we want certain changes, immediate action taking to address that. So I think that was It was very, very important.
And what was surprising was that we had over 15 CSOs
30
joining.
Well, it's at least at
Right.
the event, but I mean the whole group is represented by 32 CSOs, and a lot of them were also participating online.
Was this planned? I mean, and what's pushing such a number of civil society organizations to join in this coalition and the fight?
Well, I think when we launched the Citizen Coalition in July, we made the point that we felt that there was a certain deterioration in accountability across the public service. Certain impunity. People are doing things that they really should not be doing, and undermining the very foundations of our of democratic accountability. And we needed to find a way to kind of rebuild this culture of accountability. And this was a test. This kind of neglect of this surcharge powers, for instance, was like a key example of how something that is mandated by the Constitution, a public officer can just ignore or find a different way of sort of dealing with it. And we thought that kind of behavior has to stop. So society, I think, increasingly is understanding that the need for more coordinated action, that there are certain key components of our democracy that we all have to work together to secure. Otherwise, whether or not you're doing work on oil and gas or you're doing it on environment, you would not have the framework, the foundation, the governance foundation for those kinds of issues to be properly dealt with. So I think we're more and more understanding that.
And we're getting to those online, but for us to lay the background to this discussion, it's all about disallowance and surcharge, but beyond that as well, I'm sure that you laid some key issues as contained in that petition that you submitted to the Auditor General today. Would you say, because some have criticized you for it, for being fixated on just one institution, when there are several others in that chain that could help the Auditor General save the states of some public funds?
But it was important for us to focus on this, a very important tool which kind of brings the whole accountability architecture together, because the Auditor General has independence, and that independence ensures that if he makes that finding against an entity, he doesn't leave that entity to actually take the task of recovering that misuse or whatever. He has a tool outside of that entity to surcharge an individual who is responsible for that loss to the state. When that happens, it ensures that people are held accountable. If you rely on the same offender to go and recover the money, if they don't do it, there's really no serious mechanism for tracking, following, and making sure that that is done. And that's why even when you see the Auditor General's report, there's a long list of recommendations that are not implemented from the previous year.
Right.
So there's really no serious tracking. If anybody who's been involved in the private sector with auditing, that would be a serious matter if the next audit comes and you have not even dealt with. So it's a key component, and it's a deterrent effect. If you don't apply, then people don't think the next time that, okay, I have to be careful, I have to make sure that I follow the rules. Otherwise, I will pay for the...
So it's not the case that you're mounting undue pressure on the Auditor General?
No, and because I think what is worrying for all of us is that since 2019, there's been this complete neglect, complete failure to exercise this power.
Now you have the opportunity to meet him on Friday. We'll talk about that later. But beyond the two key issues of disallowance and surcharge, what more was contained in that petition?
There were two other issues which we also raised it when we first launched, was the issue of the asset declaration and liabilities declaration. The Fourth Estate, I think Occupy Ghana, through an RTI request, discovered that there were over 10,000 public officers who had not yet disclosed their assets and liabilities. And again, that it's part of the architecture. It's when matters come up that we are trying to see whether or not this person, actually, can explain the wealth that they have acquired. But having assets declared, liabilities declared, allow you to set some baseline so you can compare or benchmark. We are not doing that. We also raised the issue about COVID funds. We know that Parliament had already set up a committee to look at it, but we wanted to find out from the Auditor General, particularly when there was a public case that had come out where a political executive had said that this is how COVID funds were shared.
Right.
That would actually trigger a forensic audit, and we are not seeing anything. So we wanted again to understand how the Auditor General is dealing with the issues of COVID.
The Finance Minister has appeared before Parliament. That's not enough for you?
No, I think they are two separate processes, and we are hoping that the two will converge at some point. That there's a parliamentary, because after the Finance Minister appeared, a committee was set up, to look at what has been provided. But as I said, there's public information that suggests that COVID funds have been misused, which an Auditor General would certainly be interested in looking at whether or not indeed it was used for its intended purpose.
Let me bring in Kofi Bentil at this point. And there's this whole issue about the supply chain. I don't know if I should be referring to it as such. The fact that even if you go beyond the Auditor General's office, normally when the report is issued, it goes to Parliament, for instance. The Public Accounts Committee hasn't done much. They're still dealing with a backlog. So the problem may be going way beyond the office of just the Auditor General, you agree?
No, good evening to everybody. I don't agree that the problem goes beyond the office of the Auditor General per se. The only instance where I would agree to that proposition is when it comes to his office as in his appointment. I think that very few things are more important in the office of the Auditor General than finding malfeasance and recovering the money. And for the sake of deterrence, prosecuting people. To that extent, therefore, for me, it is catastrophic failure if the Auditor General does not perform that very crucial aspect of his work. And we have sufficiently made the point that because of the Occupy Ghana case, it is actually contempt of court if he doesn't do that. And it is one of the things that we will later take on. We will take steps to cite him for contempt, and we'll push that. There will be other actions coming down the line if we don't get the response that we are looking for. And one of those will be a push or a move to have him removed from office and possibly prosecuted.
You want the Auditor General removed from office?
Oh, absolutely. Look, these people are taking good salary, okay? They have good perks, all right? And they enjoy every facility of their office. We citizens have to get up and go to court to force you to do your simple job. And when it comes to doing your simple job, you refuse to do it. And like I just said, few things are more important than he recovering money that people have stolen. And I'm telling you this, it cannot be an omission. It is a decision. He has decided not to do it. If he didn't know it, now he knows it because his predecessor did it. If you say you are afraid because Mr. Domelevo did it and because of that he lost his office, you don't have any business sitting in that chair. So look, we are sick and tired of having to deal with this thing cycle after cycle. I don't know why people get into leadership positions and they lose their conscience. All right? You have a country like Ghana. In COVID times, some countries were bailing out. They were giving help to their citizens. In Ghana, we pretend to give help to our citizens and then we steal the money. Okay? People steal the money and then they end up taxing us for COVID. Take any receipt you are given when you buy anything today and look at the number of taxes on it. Half of it is being stolen. And you have an Auditor General sitting there. He has even identified some of those people. He knows where they are. They are walking around free. And he refuses to deal with it. Meanwhile, he's sitting there and his job says he should do it. He doesn't do it. We've gone to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has given a strict, clear order that says surcharge disallow, go and retrieve the money. He refuses to do it.
And Kofi, since you're bringing in the legal,
he should just leave.
right, and since you're bringing in the legal perspective at this point, there's a question coming out of what we have in the article 1877 and the fact that it pushes us into the area of discretionary power. The fact that the Auditor General may exercise that power. Is this the time to consider probably a review of what the statutes are saying about this?
No, there is no need for a review. Look, you need to understand, what the Constitution is saying. And I will refer everybody to the Occupy Ghana versus Auditor General case because the Supreme Court explained that sufficiently.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me take some time to explain it. If you are in the area of audit, there are many things that are discretionary. For instance, you can find some sort of malfeasance or impropriety, and then you can ask that it be answered to. You issue a question, some sort of a query, and say, please answer these things. There are times when the money hasn't been stolen. Maybe it has been misapplied or something and can be retrieved, or other things can be done to recover the money. In other words, when you are dealing with audit, there are many things in the process of the audit which have to do with your discretion. You don't just jump and surcharge and disallow everything simply because there's been an infraction. However, the import of what the Supreme Court said is this. If you come to the conclusion that somebody has stolen money, somebody has applied money without proper authority, somebody has misappropriated money, somebody has done with state money what they shouldn't have done. If you come to that conclusion, that made there is no longer a discretion. You will have to, you should surcharge the person and recover the money. So the Supreme Court clarified it that when you come to that end point where it is determined that the money has been stolen, misappropriated, please recover it. And it stands to sense. It makes a lot of sense. Because look, here you are with all the powers of your office, and you find out that somebody has stolen money. And then you choose to say, I will choose to do it or choose not to do it. No, you can't have that discretion. So what the Supreme Court ruling clarified for us is that the discretion in the Auditor General's job does not have to do with whether he should collect money back, recover stolen funds or not. It has to do with the process. But when it comes to the conclusion that money has been stolen, misappropriated, moved out, done whatever way that shouldn't have, he should go back and get that money. And we insist that he should do it. Indeed, it is contempt of court not to do it. All through our history, they failed to do this thing. And because of that, even good people become thieves. And the thieves become worse thieves. So please, he should do the job. If he will not do the job, we are not going to rest this time.
Could it not be the case?
Until we take him on.
Right. Could it not be the case that his predecessor appears to have set a higher standard, a reason for which all of you are now going after him, knowing the kind of personality his predecessor was?
His predecessor didn't set a high standard at all. There was zero standard. We were flat on the floor. So his predecessor, Mr. Damelevo, who did his best to do his job, and he was the first. Whatever he did, therefore, was better than anything. Okay, so I'm choosing my words well. What he did was very good because nobody had done it. But the truth of the matter is that Mr. Damelevo recovered 60 million out of a number of billions. So he was definitely on the right track. And unfortunately, they cut him short. So let us not think that Mr. Damelevo did something which is so, fantastic. The fantasy of it, or the spectacular nature of what he did, was because it hasn't been done before. But the truth of the matter is, if you are dealing with 17 billion cedis, which you have found in your report to have been misappropriated by people who live in Ghana today and are walking about, then there is not much to do when you have every authority in this land to collect the money and you don't collect it. Okay, so I understand when people think that Mr. Damelevo set a high standard, but no, he didn't. It is the work of Occupy Ghana and citizens like us who pushed him to do the right thing. And we are grateful to God that we had somebody like Mr. Damelevo who was prepared to do the right thing. And the present Auditor General clearly does not have the appetite for doing his job.
And it's interesting to note that you're still keeping up that fight. Let me bring in Lawyer Kuba this time because some have also argued that if you look at the circumstances surrounding how the previous Auditor General was, quote, pushed out of office, as most of you in the civil society believe, anyone who is occupying his office now may have a challenge doing that, if indeed you want to, quote unquote, keep your job. Counsel, what's your thought on that?
Wow, that's interesting. No, yes, ordinarily, and you are right, some people belong to that school of thought, especially, and that would go for people who just want to protect their own bread and butter. But if you have a person who thinks Ghana first, that shouldn't be their consideration. So we would always have these categories of public workers. There are those who would always tell you it's about me and my family. As for Ghana, it's a lost cause. Ghana is a lost cause. Ghana, Ghana, so if you belong to that school of thought and you think, oh, let me just grab for me, my wife, and my kids, yeah, that's how come such a person will not dare touch any sacred cows, so to speak, right? But if you belong to the other school where you think that, no, Ghana must work again, you're going, okay? And so we are basically trying to incentivize Mr. Johnson Esiedu to be able to belong to that category of a bold spirit, to be able to make Ghana work again. If Domlevo did it, why not Mr. Esiedu? Why not? And they worked together, right? He was a deputy to Domlevo, so I believe he would have learned a thing or two from Mr. Domlevo. And let's not also forget, at least on record, he has issued one disallowance and surcharge. He has done one. And Domlevo did over 100. So you see that our effort will help him. We try to free him from the cabal that is trying to obstruct him so that he can issue more. He should be able to issue more so that he can bring in a lot of the monies that are in people's pockets.
As a lawyer, what do you feel that the law gives to someone who calls himself the Auditor General of the Republic of Ghana? And to what extent can that power be exercised, really?
Good. So his number 1, 2, as I see, which we've been discussing over and over, is the power of disallowance and surcharge. And that's the one the Supreme Court has given its imprimatur, right? Supreme Court has said, yes, go ahead, use it, and it's even tightened it for him. So that's his best tool. Let him exhaust it before we'll think about adding more tools, because that tool is being underutilized. As you heard earlier, and I'm sure you also know, Domlevo recovered about 67 million, others put it at 70 million. So why not Mr. Sid? He says, so that power of disallowance and surcharge is the number 1 tool. You know, there are other ones where he's done the performance audit. Yes, that's also good. So that the performance audit report where he looks at the performance of these public institutions and all that. Yes, but right now we are zooming in, putting all our energies behind the power to disallow and surcharge so that you can see this from 2016 to date, it's about 55 billion Ghana cedis. And you've heard the common refrain that, if we could recover all this money, would we go to IMF? If we could recover all this money, would we be crying about reviewing free SHS? And at this time, it's instructive to note that, you know, when the president was in opposition, he granted an interview to the BBC where he was asked about funding free SHS. And he said, if he blocks corruption alone, he can fund free SHS. Yet, that's the same corruption we are seeing in the Auditor General's report. So it means that the president is not living up to the billing. He himself said if he can tackle corruption, he has full funding for free SHS. And yet, the figures are ballooning. They're just going up 17 billion Ghana cedis in the 2021 report. That's a new high.
Occupy Ghana says the suspicion is inordinate reluctance on the part of the Auditor General. Is that the same suspicion you have?
Yes, because the people who have to pay back a lot of the money, a lot of them are politically connected. So let's take the OMCs. Among the cash irregularities, about 490-something million of it is owed by 14 OMCs. 14 OMCs owe about 490-something million. That's the highest component of the cash, the irregularities out of the 1 billion. Yeah, you look, and then it's not far-fetched. You see that they are political friends. And political friends, wow, they have to sort themselves out. So the reluctance is not coincidence. No. If you follow the money, you see behind all of these things, you see a cabal, you see chronism, and all that, family and friends, all of it. That's the extension of the family and friends regime we have playing out there in the Auditor General's report, looming very large in our governance architecture. That's a shame.
Dr. Asante, let me bring you in because there's this perception that looking at the kind of support civil society gave to Daniel Yaw-Domelevo, it appears Johnson Nakuam is not getting the same. Is it correct to make draw such a conclusion?
It's not about the person. I don't think, civil society, we are some sort of tribal, we pick and choose who we like. Right. I think we've always been concerned about the issues. And whoever has stood, for the issues, we've been the same way we support the OSP if they act. If the OSP doesn't act, we are going to take the OSP on. So it's never really about an individual. The powers, we have fought for the office of the Auditor General, to be supreme, to be independent. And that's why we still have a case pending, at the Supreme Court, to just affirm this independence of the Auditor General. Because it is very, very important, the role that the Auditor General plays. And that's why the independence has to be protected. Because, as I said, it does not make sense to ask the offender to go and recover money. That's not the intention of the Constitution, because you understand the Constitution itself, understand the architects of the Constitution, understand that you create a conflict of interest situation. So the matter, for example, involving the Ministry of Finance, where it says, okay, we have gone and recovered the money that we paid to these people who are not on the payroll. How do we tell that these monies were actually retrieved from the individuals, their own personal or private coffers, and not from the same taxpayers' money that is at the Ministry of Finance, to do that recovery? Meanwhile, if those people were surcharged or whoever was surcharged, then you are guaranteed that that person would have to come and pay from their own resources. And then that becomes a deterrent effect. So the way we approached it, we are not going to really make any serious inroads in terms of recoveries. Yes, some of the recoveries might come, but in terms of really sending a signal that you have to act with due diligence, you have to act in accordance with the rules of public financial management, you can do that through surcharge because it punishes you for violating the laws, right? So, yes, it's not, we are not interested in personalities. That's not what we do.
If you look at the 2021 findings, for instance, some of them border on share criminality. Yes. And this is where the Auditor General could be spared because there's the concern about the constitutional powers being given to the Office of the Attorney General. Why are we letting him off the hook in this case?
No, I don't think anybody's, there's a sequence to it. When you issue the certificate, the surcharge certificate, if the person, does not pay the penalty, then they can be prosecuted. Actually, I think during Mr. Domelevo's time, he actually got a fiat from the Attorney General to even pursue these cases himself. Yes, we didn't have any prosecutions, but the sequencing is that, and that's why the Attorney General was saying, yes, you have issued one certificate, but we are still waiting for documentation which you have not provided. So there's a sequence. If that person does not redeem, themselves in respect of the surcharge, then of course the prosecution comes in. As you're saying, in some cases it's just theft.
Right.
right? So the recovery, that's ensured, but you can still go ahead and prosecute, right? So, I mean, these are really important steps in the accountability structure value chain that if you don't utilize it, then the whole system is not incentivized in the way to respond, to create that deterrent effect. And if this has been happening since 2019, then you can understand that people have just relaxed. They know that every year the report will come, myself and the media, civil society will discuss it, and we all go to sleep. Maybe some people might recover it, some people might not, but nothing really gets done. Then there's no fear.
The public sector itself is where another focus could be, because if we are not able to get the Auditor General go after these persons, the expectation will be that government and by extension the various agencies will be prudent, at least in using state funds. Why are we not seeing that? And what factors could we introduce? I mean, learning from some of the recommendations from the Auditor General, just to correct the problem.
So there are many things that, for me, just are not being enforced. You shouldn't, I think if you are relying for individuals to build a certain moral code, I think that's an important component of building a system of integrity. But the first level is to just make it preventive. The cost of actually engaging in corruption has to be that high, that the kind of effort you have to put in order for you to be corrupt, you have to surmount all kinds of hurdles before you can do that. At the moment, it's the opposite. The cost is very, very low because you're almost guaranteed that nobody's really going to, take the issue up. So if the Auditor General is not doing it, if Parliament is not doing it, and actually, I mean, for me, the issue of Parliament has come in.
Yeah.
And where there's this confusion where there's this suggestion that Parliament, now has to go into the matter through these hearings and almost
Public
make a
Accounts
determination of guilt.
Right.
That's not an audit then. An audit is final, it's determined. You can go and contest it in court when charges are issued against you. But what Parliament does is not to reopen the audit and determine whether or not the finding is a finding of fact or fiction, which is what people are creating. Rather, you should go and look at, when you look at the Auditor General's report on general government, even they raise questions about even matching the revenue figures from GRA as against what is in the MDAs. And there are serious variations. When they start to look at just the balance sheet, the statement of accounts, there are variations. So Parliament is the one that at the strategic level has to be looking at this and saying, no, the next time we get a report, this has to be fixed, because if you cannot even match your revenues, how can you be sure that what you're actually collecting is what is being reporting? So when I look at those reports, I'm like, there's so much Parliament could do, and not whether somebody has spent 100 cedis or 2,000 cedis and they are going to be, there's going to be a hearing. There are even more serious, fundamental public financial management distortions in just our accounts that they should be insisting that Ministry of Finance, if we don't see any improvement, we are not going to approve appropriations for these entities. Then there is some incentive for the public office to get our funds, properly corrected.
Kofi, the issue about policy measures and being preventive, where do you stand on this?
No point in piling up policy after policy after policy if we just make those policies and leave people to choose whether they are going to apply them or not. Look, we have enough laws, we have enough policies, just work them, let them work. And we could see from what Mr. Domilevo did that it can work. And clearly the systems are sufficient. Even if you are surcharged and you disagree, you can go to court and vindicate yourself. People have gone to court and they have won. Sometimes on the technicality they won. Okay, so the systems are there. What's the point in having new policy? The only policy we need now is a policy that if you don't do your job, you leave the place. Because we are sick and tired. Look, the stress is palpable. And there's so much anger out there. Again, if you take COVID, I mean, people took COVID money and spent it within their party as if it was their family money. And they came out and spoke about it, and nothing happened.
Yeah, but if you're
So
talking
there's
about
no
the
point
COVID,
about
for
policy
instance,
after policy, if nobody is going to work that policy and make sure that we are getting some serious accountability down the line.
Kofi, since you're talking about the COVID expenditure, for instance, he's made some findings talking about the COVID-19 trust fund, flagging some 254,000 that was spent on protective equipment. So he's done his bit by at least bringing to the fore some of the red flags in terms of the expenditure. Why not bring in the Attorney General as well, try and push for some of these monies to be sought after?
He hasn't done his bit at all. If you have 100 pieces of, 100 stones to pick and you pick 2, you haven't done your work. And Kojo just explained to you that there's a process, there's a sequence. You have to get to a certain point and then you hand it over to the Attorney General. We know cases where people came out and spoke about COVID funds being used for party political activity. What has happened to that? And like I'm saying, look, we sat here and people went to Parliament and supposedly gave accounts for COVID expenditure as if they were talking to their nursery kids. Things that no serious person would believe, all right? About how much money was spent on this and how much money was spent on that. Who has gone to check? We all know they stole the money. Who has gone to check it? And I think I'm channeling the anger out there because I've spoken to a few people. Okay, these things happen. You sit in your office, you nitpick a few, inconsequential things and pretend that you have done your job. And the huge elephant is sitting in the room. Okay, there is no need for new policies or new laws if you're not going to respect the ones that exist. And if he wants to do his job, he should get up and do it. The things are staring him in the face right now, and they are the easier ones. This is just part of the problem. The bigger problem we haven't dealt with, because it's not everything that he has found. What he has found, he should go after them. So whether it's COVID, I keep using COVID because I've been having discussions about COVID. There are so many other aspects to corruption in this country, and it's just gotten worse. So look, he should get up and do his work. And if he doesn't, we are coming after him.
You have an opportunity on Friday, as we're getting, the indications we're getting. That could be a great opportunity for some redress to take place, you agree?
Oh, absolutely. We're all looking forward to the Friday meeting. Today, what happened was just a simple exercise to let them know that we were serious. There are a number of things we could do. Friday, we are hoping that when we meet them, we will hear some real progress. We will see a roadmap. We will not just go and have a long meeting and just talk grammar and then come back because we are tired of it. We are not going to take it no more. And if we don't get the kind of response that we think we should be getting, unless he tells us there is something he needs that he has not been given, because everything he needs has been given him, we will see more serious demonstrations in this country, and we will see serious court action, and we will see serious citizen movement towards accountability. Look, we are all sitting on a powder cake. We should be careful. I keep saying that if this corruption goes on, we are risking this democracy. And one day when it blows up, you will see what I'm talking about. And it doesn't take much to fix. We are talking about what he has even found. And I'm absolutely sure there is more he hasn't found. So why won't you just go after what you found? Tell me why you will not go after what you found. So Friday, we'll go and see him and we hope that we'll hear something.
Is there any optimum level you're looking at for the Auditor General in terms of surcharge? Is there any level you're looking at?
The level at least should start from what he has discovered. You were talking about how we are supportive of Mr. Domilevo. And I was telling you that what Mr. Domilevo did was not fantastic in the true sense of the word. It was fantastic to the extent that it had not been done before. Yeah. But because he was on the right path, because he showed that he was of the right stuff and he was going to go along that, it didn't matter that he had even started and hadn't gotten too far. He got our support. So the point is, let us see you moving in the right direction. And that is what we are not seeing from this particular Auditor General. After all, somebody started something. You came and met it. Follow it. You won't follow it. All this time, you've issued just one. As if to throw some, something to us and think that we'll be chewing on it forever. And then you go and issue new reports and everything. And every day you come and tell us what rot is going on. And then you sit in your office and enjoy the air conditioning. The point is, if we see him moving in the right direction, he will get our support. We will all do what we need to do to make sure that he succeeds in his job. But clearly, like I said, it does not occur to me that this is something that is a difficulty. This is a decision. He has decided that he is not going to surcharge and disallow. And I insist that it is a gross incompetence, or he is simply in contempt of the Supreme Court. And if he is not willing to do the job, if he's going to be in contempt of the Supreme Court, if he's going to be incompetent, he shouldn't be in this place. And if we have to move for his removal, we will move for his removal.
And the push for his removal is something I may want to wrap up with you on. But for now, let me bring in lawyer Martin People as well, because, lawyer, you were raising some concerns about a cartel, probably some influence peddling in this case. But if you look at the constitutional stipulation, the Auditor General is expected to be independent. In fact, the Constitution goes ahead to say that this is one man who's not subject to the control of any person or institution.
Blessed. Well, that's on paper. Eh? I hope I can call it blessed. Or
yes, that's yes.
Yeah, that's on paper, but in practice, it's a different kettle of fish. So independence, it's a problem. I think that, look, the Auditor General needs our support because he's not truly independent. If he were, trust me, Mr. Siedu knows how to recover this money. But because of those relationships, sacred cows, don't touch this person, don't touch that. That's why these things keep recurring even under his regime. Because ask yourself, oil marketing companies owing 490-something million, those companies, they have filling stations. They are known. Oil marketing companies, those are taxes they are to pay on oil liftings, oil that they've lifted and they are selling. Okay? Yeah, and they are the OMCs, that's the ones we call the petrol station or filling stations. Yeah, so they are all over the country. So why has the money not been paid? You see, so, those people, they just can't hide. They can't hide. And OMC usually is a filling station. And even to be called an OMC, to register, let me show you, there's usually a threshold. I think there's a number of branches, that's outlets you should have. It's not less than 4. Not less than 4. The last time, maybe 5, 6 or something. But it's a certain number. Even if it were an OMC having just one filling station, like we say ordinarily as lay people, it means that there is a physical location that we all can find, very open. You can't hide a petrol station in your bedroom or your backyard. So they are hiding in plain sight. So it tells you that, look, if you follow the money, you see the story behind it. So look, as Kofi said, there are so many laws. The Auditor General has to be we've engaged him, so he's beginning to show signs. Initially, he was snubbing us. Now he's engaging. So I'm that type that because he's beginning to engage, I'll hold fire. Let's see how Friday's meeting goes, and then we'll take it from there.
And in fact, we are all on the lookout for that. Dr. Asante, I also take your expectation on Friday's meeting.
No, I think what Kofi has said is that already the Auditor General, through the reports, have made very clear determinations of disallowances. The language might be used, once you say an expenditure is irregular, right, and therefore basically somebody should recover, you are basically saying that you have disallowed that expenditure. And therefore, all of those cases are potential cases of surcharging. So we should start from there. I'm looking forward to it because maybe some actions have been taken that they have not updated us. They can also explain to us why since 2019. Because you see, the other thing that is very, very difficult for us, that if you have not done that work, going back to 2019 to go and follow up some of these things might be quite challenging.
But are you going with some set of demands on the table?
Well, we are already starting to extract from the Auditor General's report these potential cases of surcharge, so that at least we can all be on the same page in terms of, the list of cases that, we feel that, we already should be pursuing. Let's start that process. As I said, it's already in the reports. He's already made some determinations as to that. Let's start with that. If we start with that, at least we'll begin back on the road of trying to, fulfill what the Supreme Court basically decided in 2017.
And Kofi, this is where I want to quickly take your final thoughts on this. The push for his replacement. You're saying that if he doesn't fulfill all of these requirements, then he would have to leave office. How much time do you have, at least from the perspective of Imani Africa?
Oh, I mean, it's not about that in terms of a timetable for removing him. I'm making a principled position, and it's something that we're absolutely determined to push. If you remember way back from when Mr. Demelo was appointed, he was appointed at a very late time in President Mohammed's period, and
yes.
there were all kinds of questions about that. We said, let's give him the chance. He came in, he did a good job, we were fine. The president found a way of removing him. There are processes for removing people like the Auditor General from office if they are found to be in contempt of court. And there are processes for dealing with them if they are found not to be doing their job, etc. My point is this. This is a stepped process. It's an approach. Today, we have had a simple protest. Before then, Occupy Ghana has been writing letters upon letters upon letters. It gets to a point where people start moving. And I'm saying that somewhere down the line, clearly, I can argue that the present Auditor General is in contempt of the Supreme Court.
All right.
I can argue that he has been derelict in his duty. So I'm saying we're going to have a meeting. We hope that he will be up and doing and will show us some real reasons why this has happened and then a way forward that is satisfactory to us citizens. Okay. And if we are not convinced and we think that he definitely does not want to do his job,
all right,
of course, moving for his removal is one of the options we have.
we need to go. Martin People, 30 seconds for you as we wrap up.
Okay, so my 30 seconds, please. Blessed, what we need to do is that, let's say a month from now, please host us again, or maybe a different panel, but to track. You also be doing your tracking on the PM Express. Let's keep tracking. Citizens need to keep giving this case all the traction it deserves. Then Mr. Johnson Esiedu can do his work well.
That's all we are hoping that he will do. But for now, I'm grateful for your time, Dr. Santi, Kofi Bentil, and Martin People. I'm grateful. I am Blessed Sogah. Log on to myjoyonline.com for more stories.